Good morning and welcome to the live series Straight Off the Bat, a show that covers the need to revive, survive, and adapt to new normal of COVID-19. Excitement does not cover how I feel right now because I haven't seen you guys since last year. Yes, it's a dad joke, but this is real, okay? And if you haven't joined us before, we usually do this on Thursdays when we speak to individuals across multiple industries who will help you understand financial literacy and education. If you're joining us from LinkedIn, thank you. Don't forget to smash that follow button and continue seeing content that'll help you manage your money, especially now that we're all planning our resolutions. Let me just say your resolution should be to follow this page because you need help with your money. This is the best place to do it. Today, we're discussing business opportunities and tips for family businesses in Trinidad and Tobago. And I'm excited to have our guest today, Mr. Sajjad Hamid. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration Marketing from the University of Florida and is currently a lecturer of entrepreneurship and family business in Trinidad and Tobago. He has published over 200 articles that advise small and medium-sized enterprises and family business owners. He's also a board member of the Shogunas Chamber of Industry and Commerce, and he hopes to retire one day in his garden, which I'm going to have some tips on that because I don't possess a green thumb.
Your strategy has to involve your mindset, and your strategy then involves the actions that you take to move you from where you are to where you want to be.
I'll start with what Visa isn't, right? Visa doesn't issue credit card. We don't issue credit. So Visa doesn't do that, which surprises a lot of people.
We'll use a phrase like, well, things changed, but things don't change. People change things. All the legislation that has been passed, somebody advocated for that. And so International Women's Day is to commemorate that history of women making change.
Several of the banks have started to migrate their existing debit card portfolio to chip and pin EMV technology. So the SMEs are going to benefit from a wide range of customers who previously did not have a credit card, but only had a debit card.
So let's get straight into it. When it comes to family business, I am positive every single person watching this knows somebody who either has a family business or works in a family business. And because it's something not so common, we don't necessarily dissect it. So if you can just give us sort of a clear definition of what a family business is.
Right. Well, the feel of, if I have to answer you academically, right, I won't get too much into that, is that the feel of family business, they haven't really decided what is a family business, right? So I wouldn't get into that, but what we know is that family businesses behave differently from their counterparts, which are non-family businesses. So for example, we know that they want to leave a legacy behind. We know that they are managed differently. And we know that they have a different entrepreneurial spirit. They have a different way of doing things. So we know how they influence a business is that they may own the business. I don't want to be 100%, right? And they may express their ownership and also their influence on the business, maybe through the board of directors. So they may not be working in the business. They may be working in the business also, and they will influence the strategic direction of the business. And also a family business, a true family business, wants to continue to the next generations. So I would call that basically a working explanation of what a family business
Economic
is.
Perspective, we don't necessarily dissect and say, okay, this is a family business. This is how it impacts us. Why is it important to have that knowledge and education around family business, especially when it relates to Trinidad and Tobago, and what's the economic impact for us as citizens?
Well, I hope I got the question right, because I hear you asking about the economic impact. One of the things about family businesses is that they are actually more common than we think. It's actually in the blind spot of management and strategy, policy making too, because governments around the world do not have much policies that cover family businesses, right? And they create a lot of wealth. We know that because in Trinidad, for example, and around the world, some of the wealthiest people in Trinidad are people who own family businesses.
What would be one of the main pros that we should be aware of when it comes to that business opportunity? Because a lot of times we may have an idea and we want to gung-ho and say, okay, I'm going to do it by myself. But a lot of times we could be utilizing the people who are right next to us. So can you give us a pro that will be basically something that we could say, okay, yes, this is something I could work with? Because a lot of people are looking for entrepreneurship opportunities.
Right. I know you're breaking up a little bit, but I assume you're asking about the pros of the advantages of being in a family business. I think that's what you're asking, right, Bodhi?
Yes.
Right. So well, you could be a solopreneur, a solo entrepreneur, and that is very common. We have technology to do that. I could operate in my office and I could do training and consulting and mentorship and all that, right? But let's say you wanted to involve your family, right, into the business. I know it's a little more complicated, and we could come to that. Some of the advantages of being in a family business is that you could have a short income, right, for the family, and that is very important. We point out the wealth aspect of it, right? We know family businesses create a lot of wealth. You know, the big names I called are somebody very wealthy in Trinidad. I'm sure they don't bother about if they could pay the cable bill at the end of the day, right? They don't probably look at cash flow and that sort of thing like us, right? Also, if you work in a family business, you have the potential to work flexible hours, but don't get carried away with that, because my relatives, they have a roti business in South, and I remember growing up that when he started it, he and his wife worked. They used to get up 3 and 4 in the morning, right? Of course, that's at the beginning, but at the end, when you mature the business, when business matures, you could have a situation where you could hire people, right? And of course, one of the big advantages of a family business is that if you want to leave something behind, property is good, a nice house is good, maybe a nice car, but a family business is something that could last for generations if you practice good succession. So, and I think that'll be important, because most of us will not be remembered 100 years from now.
That is some very good insight. And I want to switch it over to, the cons, because as someone who has worked in a family business before in an administrative role, I did not see a future in that business, because I realized by default I would never go where I need to go, because the family is being trained, and sometimes not even knowledge of the business. They buy just connection or last name, they got the job. So with my experience, can you add on a con to the family business?
Right. So if you work in a family business, you might say, well, there's just so far I could go, right? There's not a glass ceiling. We say glass ceiling for women, they can't go very far up the ladder because of the prejudices we have. So nepotism is common in our family business, right? So that is obvious, and of course there are different types of family business, but the typical family business would give the plump positions to members of the family, right? But some of the cons, disadvantages of owning a family business is that actually it's fairly complicated to manage. When you have let's say a company like Massey, all you have is you have the shareholders and you have the managers, and they have governance, so you separate the shareholding from the managers. But in a family business, you have a third dimension, which is called the family. So you have family, you have the shareholders, and then you have the management. So because you have 3 systems in place that arises, now a normal business has the shareholders and you have the managers, and it's separated by the board and all that. But in a family business, when you introduce the family, you have 3 dimensions to manage, and that makes it ripe for conflict, right? And that is a serious problem.
the pros and cons of family business and the economic impact that it has in Trinidad and Tobago. If you missed that, don't worry. Once this is ended, you can go check out the replay, as well as we're looking at the elements of success, because with names like Bermuda's, Arthur Lockjack, SM Jaleel, Bagwan Singh, these are all family businesses that are showing us that it is an opportunity to be successful. So I want to get into some of the challenges that you may face when it comes to building that business or working within that business. So we want to welcome back in Sajjad and see if we can get him, and the internet's going to hold strong for this answer. Did you get me there?
Yeah, yes, I did. I changed even with Booster and all that. I'm still getting this problem. Welcome to Central Trinidad, I suppose. So you're asking me about. I just wanted to, before I answer that question, I just wanted to mention why is it they're successful. In that family businesses, they tend to have a lower cost structure than non-family businesses, and the reason being is that when families own a business, it's like an extension of themselves. So you wouldn't waste toothpaste or let your kids waste toothpaste at home. So one of my students asked me, well, once I sorted the ketchup and I threw it in the bin. She was working at a hamburger joint, and the owner said, wait, hold on, pick that up again, you still got ketchup inside here, right? So they have a lower cost structure, but they also have something called a very low cost of capital. Now, a business to be profitable, it must have a low cost of capital, because the higher that is, the more you'll have the higher return you'll need to have. So how they have a low cost of capital is that their investment horizon is longer than a non-family business. A typical business, let's say, would look at 5 years for a payback. A family business, they may look at maybe 5, 7, maybe 30 years, the next generation. Now, here's the big difference, is that family businesses, sometimes the founders invest money in the business for the next generation and don't want it back. And when they do that, the cost of capital becomes zero. So if your competitor is a non-family business and they have almost zero cost of capital, to win them is very difficult, right? So I thought I'd clear that up, right? So you're asking me the question about the success in the family business.
Actually,
right?
Before you get into that, because I really enjoyed what you said there, and I didn't really think about it like that, because you're thinking, family business from an outside perspective, nepotism, but a cost of capital is quite lucrative in the success of business. So what happens if you have your family invested in a business, not monetary, but they're giving their labor at a low cost, but they are getting on your nerves? What is your suggestion with balancing that? Because there's this, well, you are a part of an organization, but you're also part of a family. What do you have any advice as to how to balance the two?
Yeah, well, I have the same problem too, because I work out of home, right? But what is very important is that family businesses, they do have conflict, right? But it is more constructive conflict. What they do is that they have they build harmony in their lives. So what they will do is things like this. They may have regular meetings. Now in Trinidad, our culture, from my understanding, is that we don't have family meetings. Forget about the business part. So in my family, for example, I try to have regular meetings, and sometimes it doesn't involve business. And we talk about what you did today and what I did today and what you achieved. So we hold each other accountable. Now I'm trying to pull my son into this business, and he seemed to know how to click this and thing on the internet and help him build my website and all kind of thing. I just know how he do it, and even though he's only 15 years old, right? So he's my IT manager. So it is important that you introduce them early into the business. Now, when my father had a business, during the vacation time, I would help out, right? And we know that family businesses, their kids in vacation, instead of only playing cricket and football, which is good, you get them involved in the business. So you plant a seed very early in their head and let them know how it has been run. Now, I wrote a case study on Rams Logistics, right? A very successful family business. And Sean, who is now the CEO, he took over from his father. He said that during the vacation time, when people are having, his friends were having a good time playing cricket, he was in the family business. So what the family business is like a business school, not a normal business school like UB or COSTAT or UTT, is that they get hands-on education on how to run a business. I know I might be taking a swipe at the education system, but sometimes you get a better education in business in the school of hard knocks than if you're in that classroom. I mean, that's a general statement I'm making there.
But that was like my first experience with money. Very, very first experience.
I've been in banking since I was a teenager.
Challenges you will have when you don't have those discussions and you don't have those meetings? What can we expect businesses could encounter when those things don't happen?
Right. Well, we noticed that family businesses, they tend to have a succession problem. Now, in the United States, the figure is, and nobody has done research in Trinidad, right? In the United States, the failure rate is pretty high. I think the next generation, only 13% of businesses survive. So we know succession planning is very important in a family business. And we've seen when you have the death of a key person, the business ends up in trouble. Now, my son, and this is a conversation that my son asked me this weekend, last weekend. He says, Dad, because of the COVID, if I were to die or my wife die, his mother dies, what is the story? And that is a very good question he asked on a Sunday, right? So I went on to explain to him there are two issues that are very important. This is important in family business. When we talk succession planning, it comes down to two issues. One is, how do you transfer the ownership? So just like in my family, when I die, let's say I die from COVID or whatever, my response to him is that I have insurance, which would cover the mortgage and all the bills, and he has education fund and his sister and all that, right? If my wife also dies at the same time, we also have the insurance. We may not have a lot of cash, obviously, right? But then there's another issue on family business owners. Forget this one. Transferring the ownership is actually very easy. You go to an accountant, you take out life insurance, you could go to a lawyer, whatever. But the most challenging thing in succession planning is, how do you transfer the management of the business? Because you could have a $10 million policy and you could pay off all the debts of the business, but how does the kids or siblings or whoever, the family own the business, how do they run the business? So when going back to my son, so when he asked me, I said we have life insurance and all that, but he asked what is going to happen with him, because they can't live, they are minors. I don't think they can make great decisions yet. So I told him I already spoke to my cousin who doesn't have any kids, and they are interested in them, right? Because they like them a lot. And then my sister also likes them also. So my point is, you could transfer the ownership and you could see a lawyer, accountant, whatever. But when you come to transferring the management of the business, you need to start working on it very early. It doesn't happen in 1 month. It's like planting an orchard. Go back to my backyard gardening. If you plant a tree, it is not going to be a fruit tree like a citrus tree. It's going to take 3 and 4 years. So you got to start early with them. But let me just point out this, that succession planning, you may need some outside help, because it involves, while an entrepreneur knows how to make money, he or she does not understand how to do a succession plan and craft that. So that's one of the big problems. There are others. I just go short. A strategic plan is very important in a family. It's a little bit complicated than a non-family business, because when you're dealing with changes to the business, some family members may lose jobs, or they may lose income or whatever. And a succession plan is important, because if you were to go, the family must have a document saying how we're going to move forward, right? So that's two very important things, challenges that family business face: the absence of succession planning and doing strategic planning.
is something that, you spoke about it when it comes to life insurance, but what about businesses? Like, what does that look like, and what does that conversation start when it comes to a family business and that legacy being left?
Right. So I want to go back to the simplest of governance structures. Now, people tend to think governance is only picking the right, the board of directors and all that, right? So I go back to the family meeting or the family business meeting. You should start with small things. Don't start with big things, right? So I remember reading about the Gucci family, who's famous in the fashion goods, handbags and all that, Italian company. And the conversation at the table was this, is that the father or mother would ask the kids, do you want dessert, well, it's ice cream, or do you want to take that money and we could set it aside to buy another sewing machine, right? They were in I think garments earlier on, or handbags, and they would put that on the table. So actually the kitchen table, the dining room table, becomes kind of like a board of directors table. And of course, the education is taking place there. And they would say, well, dad or mom, let's set aside that ice cream money, and probably in 3 months' time, we could buy another sewing machine. Now, this is important in family business. They have a different mindset. They have, we talk about talent management in non-family business, but in family business, I like to call it the collective entrepreneurial intelligence, right? Which suggests that family business do well because they're entrepreneurial, and you've got to start having the meetings to discuss these big issues, right? So the Gucci family would do that, and that's how they build their business. They build it with sweat capital and giving up ice cream. Now, some research I've looked at called the marshmallow test, and this, I know it has nothing to do with family business, but it shows you how some families in Trinidad do well and some don't do well. They did some research and they found out that people who, when they were given, little kids, when they were given marshmallows, they say, if you want, you could eat a marshmallow now, or if you wait 15 minutes, you can have 2 marshmallows. And they tracked them over time, and they found out that the kids who didn't express instant gratification, or like postponed gratification, they did very well in life. So in family business, they understand sacrifice and putting off consumption. Now, you might say that there are some family businesses out there, when the second generation takes over, they sometimes squander things and they forget what built the business. And they would drive in their luxury cars and forget that the business needs money. So my point there is that if you want to deal with this conflict, you have to start the communication early and get people, don't try to tackle big problems at the family meeting. Just try to put some structure in it and start early. And you should be able to minimize this conflict that takes place.
Working in a business, we know of a family business, so we're connected in some way. And shout out to Soda. I'm hoping that I'm pronouncing your name correctly. The content is beneficial, and that's what we're here for. So when it comes to family business, a lot of us know folks in Trinidad and Tobago who may be part of a business and frustrated, and we were talking about the pros and cons earlier, and I want to discuss this idea of succession, because it might become a little ticklish when the person who started the business, I'm sure everybody they're watching here know our parents is like, well, I had to walk 2 miles to go to school. They'll tell you I had to walk 10 miles, and with that approach to parenting, that also comes with their approach to business. And although they may say, okay, yes, you're taking over my business, they don't necessarily leave the business. So what happens is you have assigned your son or daughter the role of manager, taking over the business, but yet you're showing up to the office every day with literally nothing to do. What is your advice there?
Right. That's an interesting question. Actually, in the United States, it's the same thing that happens. And a number of cases in Trinidad, I won't call any names, of course, that the founder of the business, because it is their baby, right? And I talked to a number of entrepreneurs, they say when they reach 60 or 65, they're getting out of here. I just spoke to one, and he was 60 last week, and he said he's going to get out. but unfortunately his two children are doctors, right? So I don't know who is going to take over on the business. So there are different styles of succession. One of them is the monarch style, right? The monarch style is the person will not want to leave. They want to die with their boots on, or their crown on their heads or whatever, right? And they would always be there, and they'll weigh down the business. And I hate to say this, the successor will have to wait till they die. They just wouldn't leave. I had some friends who have an auto parts business, and they stayed right up to the end, husband and wife, and they were keeping the business from adopting IT systems and Peachtree and all that sort of thing, help it run better. So that's one style. There's another style we call it general. So you say, here this, I'm leaving kids on the takeover, and they run off and they ride off into the sunset. And then one of the lawyers from the firm call them and say, hey, you know something, your children is not doing a good job and whatever. So they ride back in and they try to set things back, right? And so the succession doesn't take place. There are some that set a date, right? And they are called with a different name, and they would set a date and call the ambassador, and they would set a date and they would make sure the transition take place, right? And then there's one that would stay on, and I know of one in Trinidad and South, where the person would stay on, but as a chairman and doesn't get involved, and he leaves his children, he groom them over the years, make sure they get a good education, and they would take over. And so that's like different styles. And I must say the bottom line is that most founders do not hand over to their kids, and sometimes they wait till they get ill, and they still, you have to wheel them in, and the employees get tired of them. They want to know why you're printing in color and why you're doing this, and the little things that just keep out the business. Eventually, what happens, and we have some examples in Trinidad, I'm not going to call names, where they had to sell the business because it was just too much, and they sold the business because the kids couldn't get along also, and everybody ran off with their money, and the legacy died right there.
So as somebody who may be in that situation where you see the growth, the potential for the business, you want to make that change, and every time you make 2 steps forward, there's 5 steps going backwards because that person keeps coming back, what advice would you give that person? Do they stick it out? Because there's also emotion involved, especially with family members.
You mean the advice for the founder, or the kids who have to experience this?
Yeah, the kids or the person who's working, because we're also identifying people who work within the organization, right? So you have the kids as well as the employees who work in the organization. Right. What advice would you give to them?
Right. So you mentioned a very good point before I answer you, is that you're talking about the role of the non-family employees. Some of them are managers. Now, when the business gets pretty big, let's say from medium-sized to large, you just can't have enough family members in the business. So you have to bring in non-family members. And you got to manage them, because if you don't manage them and they leave, they take away the intelligence of the organization and go elsewhere. So you got to keep an eye on them.
Can you give us some insight building your family business from scratch?
Well, I don't want to say, well, this is an opportunity, but I like to give people a framework or perspective that they could pursue and look for opportunities. So, for example, opportunities could come to you by accident. An example would be Bertie's pepper sauce, right? So those who like pepper sauce, you probably like Bertie's pepper sauce. And they started in business, husband and wife. Well, they had no intention of starting a business. They had a guy who was doing, let's call him a landscaper or whatever. And they found out from him that he didn't have a refrigerator, right? So they were appalled by that. So they said, what do you do? Make some pepper sauce and sell it. And when they get some money, they will buy him a refrigerator, which they did. So they decided that's it. Then people started to ask for more pepper sauce. And then they decide, well, maybe this is an opportunity. So they kind of call them the accidental entrepreneur, husband and wife. And then they started to make pepper sauce, and then they had to store it in the house. Well, the typical case is that entrepreneurs start their business in their homes, right? Now, don't underestimate your homes. I know some of you may have mortgages on your house like me, but do not try to pay the mortgage. Let the house pay the mortgage, right? So Bertie started this, and now they're not out of home. I think they have a big factory or somewhere, right? Because I see a lot of pepper sauce out there. But here's an opportunity that you could use. Now, your kids who are Generation Z, they may be, less than 25 years old. They probably will not work for anybody because they can't take on this thing sitting behind a chair and dealing with a bad boss and all kind of thing, right? They're not into that. So talk to them. We have the technology now, and I have probably a workshop coming called the Knowledge Solopreneur, where people have skills right now, and there are a lot of people out there who have degrees and experience and expertise, and you could start a business out of your home, right? I have a light, I have a webcam, and I have a headset. Well, I had this backup somewhere, and I could conduct training courses out of home. So I'm not saying you could only do training. You could do anything in the service business. Maybe you could do mentorship, maybe you could do coaching, maybe you could do advising or whatever. And maybe you could start with the kids, because I'm trying to bring my son in because he seemed to know technology better than me. Now, he can't develop the content because he's only 15 years old. So if you're looking for opportunity, maybe you could bring them in and use digital technology, because what happened now, and it's not hard to use. I mean, just play around, and eventually you'll figure it out or take a course. I think the world of work is going to change where people can have a one-person business. I know you're talking family business. You can start as a one-person business and then start slowly bringing your family members into that business. So I think that is one thing you should look at. Look at the skills that you have. You have expertise, which could be improved, of course, and figure out how can I monetize that, right? You don't need to put up a big building. You don't need to enjoy cubicle life. I mean, who does enjoy cubicle life? Put a picture there, the characters there. I mean, I don't know, right?
That is such an interesting story about Bertie's, because when you think about it, pepper sauce is a dime a dozen, actually even more now. So, but now when I'm traveling, my friends ask me to bring the Bertie sauce, so that is such an inspirational as well. And you may want to join us next week, Thursday. We go live again, and sign up to be notified for the next live show via the links in the comments below. Check it out. As always, be sure to like us if you're on LinkedIn, and I will see you then. Have a good one, guys. Bye.
Okay, bye.